Hi there, I'm Helen, a 35-year-old woman who thrives on organization and tidiness. I work as an auditor for a prominent firm, and my meticulous habits, especially when it comes to keeping receipts and handling taxes, often become the subject of friendly teasing among my friends. However, I firmly believe these little routines are what keep my life running smoothly. My journey with my husband Scott began at a party hosted by our mutual friend Brenda. I remember that night vividly. I was enjoying a glass of wine and reconnecting with some old college friends when Scott walked in. Slightly older than me, he exuded confidence and flashed a captivating smile. As a manager at a food sales company, he approached me with an easy charm. "Hey, I'm Scott. Mind if I join you?" he asked, clutching a beer and meeting my gaze directly. "Sure, I'm Helen. Nice to meet you," I replied, mirroring his smile. Our conversation flowed effortlessly as we discovered our shared love for hiking and classic rock. A few months later, Scott invited me to a barbecue at his sister Margaret's house, marking my first encounter with his family. I felt a mix of excitement and nerves, but Margaret welcomed us warmly. Her 4 children were a whirlwind of energy, scattering toys and racing around. Despite my discomfort with the chaos, I introduced myself. "Nice to meet you all," I said as their antics escalated throughout the evening. As Scott and I grew closer, our discussions about the future deepened. He proposed during a scenic hike, the valley sprawling below us. It was a simple yet heartfelt moment, exactly my style. Our wedding was beautiful, though it was slightly disrupted by Margaret's kids, who reveled in their chaos. While Scott laughed it off, I struggled to contain my irritation, choosing to focus on the joy of our special day. After marriage, we decided it was time to buy our own home, transitioning from our rented apartment. One evening, during a conversation about finances and household responsibilities, Scott surprised me by offering to buy me a new car to replace my aging vehicle. I was taken aback, filled with delight. "Yeah, it's about time you had something dependable," he said with a warm smile, clearly excited about our future together. We dove into house hunting, and after a few weeks, we found a stunning home that was a bit pricey but felt perfect for us. The move was chaotic, but I was thrilled at the thought of decorating our new space. I spent hours selecting stylish furniture and appliances. Then, on a Saturday, Scott surprised me with a sleek, shiny new car. Overjoyed, I hugged him tightly. "Scott, this is incredible. Thank you so much," I exclaimed. "You're welcome, Helen. You deserve it," he replied with a smile. As we settled into our new home, everything seemed perfect. We both enjoyed our jobs and loved returning to our cozy, lovingly decorated space. However, as time passed, small things began to irritate me. Scott's once endearing, relaxed attitude started to wear on me, especially regarding household chores. "Scott, can you help with the dishes tonight?" I asked one evening after dinner. He glanced at me with tired eyes. "I had a long day. Can't we just do them tomorrow?" Frustration bubbled up inside me. "Scott, we can't keep putting things off. I'm tired too, but we need to maintain a clean home." Reluctantly, he agreed and got up from the couch. Just a few months into our marriage, it was clear we were facing some challenges. I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me as I struggled to get pregnant. It was a source of constant stress, and though my doctor assured me it would happen when the time was right, it was hard not to worry. Meanwhile, Scott's sister Margaret, who lived just a state away, seemed to be visiting us constantly. It felt like she was practically living next door. Each visit was a torrent of her marital troubles. "Helen, you won't believe what Kevin did this time," she would start, rolling her eyes dramatically. One evening, desperate to change the subject, I suggested, "Margaret, can we talk about something else for a change?" "Oh, come on, Helen. I need to vent. You're the only one who gets it," she replied, oblivious to my discomfort. Her kids were equally exhausting, transforming our home into a chaotic circus the moment they arrived. Running, fighting, throwing food, and being incredibly loud. After a long week, all I wanted was some peace, but that seemed impossible. "Guys, can you please calm down?" I pleaded, struggling to maintain my composure. "Why are you always so uptight, Helen?" Margaret snapped when I tried to manage her kids' behavior. "They're making a mess, Margaret. I just cleaned up," I shot back, my patience wearing thin. Then she delivered a low blow that hit hard. "Well, maybe if you had your own kids, you'd understand." Her words stung deeply, especially given my struggles with fertility. I couldn't believe Scott didn't stand up for me. "Scott, are you going to let her talk to me like that?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger and hurt. Calm down, Helen. You're making a big deal out of nothing, he replied, siding with her yet again. A big deal out of nothing. She just insulted me in my own home, I shouted, tears threatening to spill. I was done with feeling undermined and unappreciated in my own space, especially when Scott always took his sister's side. This constant disrespect was wearing me down, and I knew something had to change. One Saturday, Margaret showed up unannounced with her 4 kids in tow. Helen, I need a break from parenting. I'm going shopping, she declared, dropping her kids off without waiting for a response. The irony of her using the word parenting made me chuckle despite my frustration. Fine, but make it quick, I replied, the stress already mounting. Thanks, Helen. You're a lifesaver, she chirped, grabbing her purse and rushing out before I could protest. There I was in the kitchen trying to cook dinner. For me, cooking was a meticulous process, and I liked everything to be just right. But with the kids causing chaos, focusing was nearly impossible. They ran around, yelling and making a mess. Guys, can you keep it down? I shouted from the kitchen, hoping for a moment of peace. Of course, they paid no attention. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the house, and my heart sank. I dashed into the living room, only to find my worst fear realized. My grandfather's antique Chinese vase lay shattered on the floor. My chest tightened with anger and frustration. What the hell happened here? I screamed, facing the kids, who stood frozen with guilty expressions. We were just playing, one of them mumbled, avoiding my gaze. This vase was priceless. It belonged to my grandfather. Do you understand what you've done? I was livid, shaking with rage. Just then, Scott walked in, calm and clueless. What's going on, Helen? He asked, noticing the chaos. Your niece and nephews just broke my grandfather's vase. Look at this mess. I pointed to the shattered pieces on the floor. Calm down, Helen. It's just a vase. We can get it fixed, Scott said, dismissing my feelings as if it were nothing. Scott, this isn't just about the vase. It's about respect. I'm tired of this. Every time Margaret visits, our house turns into a disaster zone, and you don't seem to care. My voice cracked with frustration. Just then, Margaret walked in, bags in hand, looking annoyed. What's all this yelling about? Your kids broke my grandfather's vase. Look at this mess. I pointed to the floor, struggling to hold back tears. Well, maybe you should have kept a better eye on them, she shot back, completely unapologetic. Are you kidding me? They're your kids, Margaret. I shouldn't have to watch them. My hands trembled with anger. Scott shook his head, looking annoyed. You're overreacting, Helen. Just drop it. Overreacting? I've had enough of this. I'm tired of being treated like I don't matter in my own home. I screamed, tears finally spilling over. Scott stood there silent and cold while Margaret smirked as if she had won some kind of victory. I couldn't take it anymore. Overwhelmed by a mix of anger, hurt, and betrayal, I stormed out of the room. Margaret's chaotic visits had been a recurring issue for months, but I had no idea what was coming next. One morning, as Scott sat at the kitchen table munching on his toast, he casually dropped a bombshell. Helen, I need to tell you something. Margaret's getting divorced and she's moving in with us, with the kids, for a few months, he announced as if discussing the weather. I nearly dropped my coffee. Are you serious? Our house is already a madhouse. Handling their chaos for a day is one thing, but living with it for months, that's a whole different story. I felt overwhelmed as I pointed out the situation. Scott looked at me earnestly. She's my sister, Helen. She needs our help. You need to be more understanding. Understanding? Scott, I've been extremely patient, but this is just too much. Why can't we rent a place for her nearby? I'll even pay for the first month's rent, I suggested, trying to keep my composure. No, she'll be better off here. Plus, you can help with the kids and keep things clean, he replied, as if the arrangement was obvious. I'm not a babysitter, Scott. I work full-time too, and I need my downtime when I get home, I retorted, my frustration boiling over. Stop being so selfish, Helen. It's family. They need us, he snapped, his tone growing sharp. I'm not being selfish. I'm looking for a reasonable compromise. I won't let my life be completely disrupted. My anger surged. Well, they're coming tomorrow evening, so you better get used to the idea, Scott said abruptly before standing up and leaving the kitchen. I was stunned, feeling blindsided and betrayed. The next morning, still reeling from our argument, I dressed for work and went to grab my car keys. But they were missing. When I called Scott, his tone was disturbingly calm. I took the car. It's mine, remember? I'm giving it to Margaret so she can use it for the kids, he informed me nonchalantly. You're giving my car to Margaret? Are you serious right now? I managed to say, shock coursing through me. It's not your car, Helen. I paid for it, and she needs it more than you do, he replied matter-of-factly. That was the last straw. You've taken everything from me, and I'm done, I said, my voice trembling with resolve. What are you talking about? Don't be dramatic, Helen, he replied, completely missing the gravity of the situation. I hung up, feeling trapped in a nightmare. How had things deteriorated so badly? I immediately called a moving company. Hi, I need a team to move some furniture and appliances today. It's urgent. The movers arrived a few hours later. I directed them around the house, pointing out what to take: the beds, sofas, chandeliers, even the bathroom faucets. Watching them remove each item brought me a peculiar sense of relief. Everything goes to my mom's house. Thanks for the quick work, guys, I said, handing over a tip. With the house now empty, I gathered my essentials and drove to my mom's place. Later that day, my phone buzzed relentlessly with calls from Scott, which I ignored, feeling a mix of anxiety and empowerment. That evening, a loud knock rattled the door. I opened the door to find Scott furious. What the hell, Helen? What did you do? He shouted, storming into the living room. I took my stuff, Scott. You took the car, so I took what I bought, I replied calmly. This is insane. You stripped the house bare. Where are Margaret and the kids supposed to sleep? He yelled, his face flushed with anger. That's your problem, Scott. You made this mess. Now you deal with it, I said, folding my arms defiantly. You're a thief, Helen. You stole everything, he accused, waving his arms frantically. I didn't steal anything. Here are the receipts, I responded, pulling out a folder and showing him proof of purchase for all the furniture and appliances. He flipped through the receipts, his anger shifting to frustration. Fine, Helen. If this is how you want to play it, I'll file for divorce, Scott said bitterly. I took a deep breath and handed him a stack of papers. Already done. Here are the divorce papers. We're finished. His face turned pale as he stared at the documents. You're serious about this, aren't you? Dead serious, Scott. I deserve better than this, I replied, a strange sense of calm washing over me. Without another word, he pulled a pen from his pocket, signed the papers, and handed them back to me. Fine, Helen. Have it your way. I watched him walk out of my mom's house, the door slamming shut behind him. For a moment, I stood there, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. It was over, and deep down, I knew it was the right decision. That night, I sat down with my mom and recounted everything that had happened. She listened, her presence comforting. When I finished, she nodded in agreement. Helen, you've been through so much. It's time you focus on yourself and your happiness, she said, hugging me tightly. Thanks, Mom. I just need some time to figure things out, I replied, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. In the days that followed, I began to settle into a new routine. I organized my space at my mom's house and started thinking about my next steps. It felt like a fresh start, and for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful about the future. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it head-on. I had reclaimed my life, and there was no turning back. After the divorce, Scott and I sold our house and split the proceeds. I decided it was time to find a place of my own. While my mom's house was a wonderful temporary sanctuary, I craved my own space. One afternoon, as we sat in the kitchen together, I scrolled through apartment listings on my laptop. Mom, I think I found the perfect place. It's a small apartment downtown, close to work, I said, showing her the pictures. She leaned over my shoulder and smiled. That looks nice, Helen. Have you called the realtor yet? Not yet, but I'm going to do that right now, I replied, feeling a surge of excitement. I dialed the number and waited for the realtor to pick up. After a few rings, a friendly voice answered. Hello, this is Raymond. How can I help you? Hi, Raymond. My name is Helen. I'm interested in the apartment you have listed downtown. Is it still available? I asked, crossing my fingers. Yes, it's still available. Would you like to schedule a viewing? He replied, sounding upbeat. Absolutely. How about tomorrow afternoon? I suggested, trying to keep my composure. That works for me. I'll see you at 4:00 p.m. Raymond confirmed before we ended the call. The next day, I met Raymond downtown to view the apartment. He greeted me with a warm smile outside the building. Hi, Helen. Nice to meet you. Let me show you around, he said, shaking my hand. The apartment was small, but cozy. Just what I needed. It featured a lovely kitchen, a spacious living room, and a small balcony with a decent view of the city. "This place is perfect, Raymond. I'll take it," I declared, a wave of relief washing over me. After signing the lease and receiving the keys, I started planning my move. I wanted to make this new space truly my own. Over the next few days, I packed up at my mom's house and arranged for movers to handle the larger items. On moving day, my mom watched as the movers loaded up the truck. She hugged me tightly, her eyes glistening with emotion but her smile radiating pride. "You're doing the right thing, Helen. I'm proud of you," she said. "Thanks, Mom. Here's to new beginnings," I replied, feeling ready to embrace whatever came next with open arms and an open heart. As the last box was hoisted into the moving truck, excitement and nerves swirled inside me about stepping into this new chapter of my life. "This is going to be great for you. A fresh start is just what you need," my mom said, wrapping me in a comforting hug. "Thanks, Mom. I'm looking forward to it," I replied, smiling broadly. We drove to my new downtown apartment, and with the help of my mom and a couple of close friends, we quickly unloaded and set everything up. As I surveyed my new surroundings, a sense of accomplishment washed over me. This was the beginning of a new chapter, and I was ready to embrace it. That evening, to celebrate the move, I invited my mom and friends to stay for dinner. We ordered pizza and gathered on the floor amidst the boxes, raising our glasses of soda and a makeshift toast. "Cheers to Helen in her new place," my friend Brenda exclaimed. "Thanks, guys. I really appreciate all your help and support," I said, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. As the night progressed, we shared laughs and stories, and for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely happy and free. Later, sitting on my balcony overlooking the city lights, I reflected on everything I had been through and how much I had grown. I was proud of myself for taking control of my life and making the necessary changes. From mutual friends, I learned that Scott had used his share of the money to buy a small apartment where he now lived with Margaret and her 4 kids. He was working 3 jobs to cover the bills while Margaret remained unemployed, and they were constantly arguing. Then, unexpectedly, Scott called me one day. Seeing his name flash on my phone screen was a surprise, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello, Scott. What's up?" I responded, keeping my tone neutral. "Helen, please just hear me out," he began, his voice tinged with desperation. "I know I messed up. I'm so sorry for everything. I didn't realize how hard it was for you with Margaret's kids." I couldn't help but chuckle slightly. "Really, Scott, you're realizing this now after all this time?" "Yeah, I know it's late, but I'm serious. I've been thinking a lot and I miss you. I miss us. Can we start over? I'm ready to move into your apartment and make things right," he said, his voice almost pleading. I shook my head in disbelief, a chuckle escaping my lips. "Scott, you've got to be kidding me. You think you can just waltz back into my life like nothing happened?" "Helen, I'm serious. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll even take on more work to make it up to you," he insisted, sounding desperate. Took a moment to gather my thoughts before responding. "Scott, it's too late for that. I've moved on. I'm building a life I love, and there's no room in it for the kind of drama you bring. I wish you the best with your situation, but I'm not interested in going back. Goodbye, Scott." With that, I ended the call, a sense of finality settling in. Turning back to the city lights, I felt a renewed sense of freedom. I was ready to move forward on my terms without looking back. "I've moved on. I'm happy now, and I'm not looking to go back to that mess," I have firmly told him. "Come on, Helen, we can make it work this time. I've changed," he insisted, a mix of desperation and hope in his voice. Feeling a blend of pity and irritation, I responded, "Scott, it's over. You need to focus on your own life and your family. I'm not interested in going back to that chaos." "Please, I'm begging you," he pleaded, his voice cracking with emotion. "Scott, no. I've found peace without you, and I'm not giving that up," I said, stating my ground. "Take care, Scott. I hope you find your way." After hanging up, I felt a strange mix of relief and closure. It was clear Scott was struggling, but I couldn't let his problems pull me back into a situation I had worked so hard to escape. Later that day, I met up with Brenda for coffee and shared the bizarre encounter. "You won't believe who called me today," I began, rolling my eyes playfully. "Who?" Brenda asked, raising an eyebrow in curiosity. "Scott. He begged me to take him back and let him move into my apartment," I recounted, shaking my head in disbelief. Brenda laughed, almost spitting out her coffee. Are you serious? What did you say? I told him no, of course, I'm not going back to that mess, I replied, a smile spreading across my face. We spent the rest of the afternoon chatting and laughing, and I realized just how far I had come. I had built a new life for myself, one that was peaceful and fulfilling. I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. As I walked home later, a deep sense of satisfaction and peace washed over me. I had finally closed the chapter on that turbulent part of my life and was ready to move forward with confidence and joy. The city around me seemed to echo my newfound freedom, and with each step, I felt more assured of the bright future ahead.